Trin.
Perfect. Thanks to all of those who have joined us this evening. Really appreciate you giving up your time for what should be a really good session with Tom and James this evening. I'll hand over to you guys to introduce yourself, but if anyone's got any questions throughout, feel free to drop them in the chat function, or if you want to come off mute, come on camera, give us a shout, and look forward to a really, really good session. Tom, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks a lot, Tom, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, again, just to reiterate, thanks for giving up your time. Thanks for booking on. And we'll take you through this kind of about an hour webinar around integrating psychosocial development into coaching sessions. Just as a brief introduction, my name is Tom. I'm a senior lecturer in sport coaching at Leeds Beckett. I'm a grassroots coach in Doncaster, so I'm based in Doncaster. I'm a coach developer with the FA. I'm an academy sports psych as well at Doncaster Rovers, so I look after their 9s to 18s provision. And we do kind of one-to-ones, work with coaches around integrating psychosocial, and then done work for other bodies like TAS, League Football Education, I coach kids, that sort of stuff. So all my details are on there. I'm happy to like interact afterwards, or drop us a message, find us on LinkedIn. So I'm more than happy with that. I'll drop forward one.
Yeah, so this is my background, a little bit similar to Tom's, I guess. So first degree was in psychology. The main part of that I actually found interesting was sports psychology, so that's kind of inspired me to go on and do a master's. So I've been lecturing as well in coaching and sports psych for the last 15 years or so, and I'm currently near the completion of a doctorate. The third paper of which is around kind of integrating psych and social factors into coaching, which is where my research interests collided with Tom's and where we've collaborated. And also 20 years or so coaching. I've done the AYA and B license, and coached the last 10 years in academy football, and 10 years before that men's football grassroots. And I've been a performance psych for around about 20 years. A lot of work in football, MMA, golf and athletics. Okay, so just a little bit of an overview of what we're doing this evening. It's basically the what, why and how. So there's a lot of kind of jargon and academic language around psychosocial skills. We're going to try and demystify it a little bit and look at kind of the reason that it's important, and then more importantly probably how we can actually embed it into sessions, so what it looks like on the grass, on the pitch.
Yeah, nice. So first kind of bit of content really is this kind of metaphor of a locker, if you like, your psychosocial locker. And it's just following on from James talking about sort of demystifying terminology. We might hear words like characteristics, values, assets, skills. Worker like Leah Dome, and this I've landed on this a little bit, and I think it's pretty useful. Like we have Dave Brown not sharing screen. Don't know, maybe Tom can have a look at that. What we've got here is like ideas of, you've got psychological or psychosocial skills, and you've got psychological psychosocial characteristics, and I think they can be kind of broadened out and they can be separated, I think, reasonably easily, and that can really give us some clarity on what we might be going after, or what we might be even talking about. So psychological skills are things we can directly teach. So things we could directly teach in a workshop, for example, if we're in a context that has that, they're things we could maybe do it on pitch side, something like that. But something we can teach, like goal setting, is a skill we can teach somebody, for example, or relaxation technique, self-talk or whatever. We can actually teach those. Now, characteristics of the other side, they're things that maybe are lower and slower and are fostered and are honed and are coached through coaching sessions, our environment, and they're sort of lower and slower over time. So psychological skills are quicker, teachable. Characteristics are lower, slower facets that we can kind of provide people through coaching. James is going to take us through some kind of further definitions and some really more kind of prominent ones.
Yeah, so we've got psych more kind of internal. So, you know, what goes on inside your head, where social will be more interpersonal and how you deal with other people. So, for example, can you bring the definitions for me, Tom?
Yeah.
So we've got things like commitment. If you could just bring them all in at once, not here. Okay, so commitment, confidence, resilience, emotional control, being a good learner, being coachable, concentration. So these are all things that go on within the person that obviously we can hopefully try and control through, like Tom said, classroom sessions, or perhaps how we teach and coach on the pitch. And then for the social, yeah, so how we interact with other people, so like teamwork, leadership, communication. And these are ones that we found in our research. So it may be that in your context, whether that's grassroots, academy, men's football, or whatever, it might be slightly different. So Tom's just got an activity to do on that.
Yeah, nice. So I guess like the message from this particular slide, if we just finish off from James there, is each characteristic as a word, as a definition, and we do need some clarity on what we're going after. The definitions of what we're going after is a pretty good starting point. So yeah, as James said, I've got a bit of an activity here. What I've got here is a QR code that's going to take you to a poll. So if you can, hopefully you've got a phone handy. If you scan that QR code, it will take you to a poll. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly come out of this PowerPoint. I'm going to get that poll on the screen and we can see it be populated live. So if you just do that, when I come out and I come back in with the poll live, it'll have the QR code again. So don't worry if you haven't got it right now and I come out, it'll come on the screen in a few seconds. And then bringing it back on later, that might help the gentleman that's struggling to see it as well. Let's see where we're at. So I'll quickly stop sharing this and I'll go out to something else. That's what we're after. I need to present the responses. So what we should be seeing here, ideally, if you've used your QR code, we'll hopefully see some responses here. And if anyone's sort of struggling in the chat, just let us know. Is that successfully working for people? Just give us a thumbs up. Here we go. Nice one. So hopefully what we're trying to get you to do here is try and think about like what sort of characteristics and skills are important in your context. So for you guys, you might be working in the men's area. Some might be working with under 8s, men, women, girls, boys, ability, disability. So I'm just interested to see what are important in your kind of areas. Be interesting to get as many as we can if possible. Not sure. I think it's 15 on the call, so be great to see if we can get some stuff here. And we're already getting some terms here. These are like characteristics, like willingness is like a low and slow, something you're going to have to probably hone over time. Awareness and autonomy. And again, they're probably more down the characteristic side and got self-awareness. So there's certainly 2 of the 4 responses talking about some kind of self-awareness. I'd probably define that as like maybe knowing yourself and knowing your strengths and weaknesses, areas for development. Any more for any more? We had loads last time. So resilience seems to be a popular one. It's certainly really common in sort of lots of areas of football. And again, I'd say that's more a characteristic than a skill. Like you can't really just do a workshop and suddenly people are resilient. So that's something you might want to consider how you might build that up over time and what that looks like. But that's really useful for what we've got there. So thanks to those that contributed. It's just interesting to see where people are coming from and what they sort of think. So I'm going to come off that and go back into the presentation. Okay, so just give us a moment. And hopefully if it pops back on, that's eradicated any issues of people not being able to see stuff. So over to you, James, the why.
Okay, so now we've kind of got some definitions. We know what we maybe need to look at. So that's obviously important because you can't really change something until you can measure it and know what it is. So in terms of the why, it's a little bit of a justification. So if you could just bring the next bit in, please, Tom.
Yeah.
So there's two kind of sides to this. So there's a performance side and then the duty of care side. So defining psychology, the difference between winning and losing is tiny fractions of a percent. So looking at some of the data there from the 26 Olympics, you can see the difference between first and second place or third and fourth place in swimming and running events was less than 1%. Yeah, so these guys have been working for 4 years, really hard training for an elite event, and it comes down to a fraction of percent. So we found that maybe technical, tactical, physical stuff tends to even out. So it's the psychological stuff, how they're feeling or thinking on the day, that will make the difference between success and failure. And then we also have the duty of care side as well. So we know that less than 5% of kids in academy football, which is quite a generous estimation, will actually go on to be footballers. But what about the rest? What about the 95+% that don't make it? We need to really remember these are children and we're looking after them, so we can build skills that will not just help the ones that make it in football, but also the ones that don't make it. So soft skills and employability skills, stuff that will make the academy experience or football experience in general something that makes them a better person rather than just a better player. Okay, so I think there's two sides: there's performance, and then there's the duty of care when you're dealing with children. So this slide kind of illustrates that a little bit. This was research that was done in the Second World War from bombers returning from raids. So they looked at where all the bullet holes were in the bombers that came back. The major flaw of this is what these are the bombers that came back. What they should have been doing is looking at where there were no bullet holes, because those were the bombers that actually got shot down. So this is what we call survivor bias, and we can be quite guilty of this in sport and football, where we focus on the winners, the ones that are successful, the ones that are thriving and doing well. Whereas I said a little bit on last slide, we need to focus on all our players and try to develop them all as people, not just a select few. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll look a little bit at cognitive or unconscious bias now. So we have something called type 1 and type 2 thinking. So this is from Daniel Kahneman. So system 1 thinking is what we do 95% of the time. It's very simple, very straightforward. We come to snap judgments, we use stereotypes, kind of automatic thinking. Whereas what we should be doing maybe is what we do 5% of the time, the deeper, kind of more rational, logical thinking. So we tend to use more system 1 maybe when we're looking at footballers, which we'll explain a little bit now. Next slide, please.
Can I give it a play?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's a really good. I think that's a really good way of. Okay, I think he's done now. Okay, so that's just a really good kind of example of how if we're looking too hard at one thing, miss other things. So in this context, in football, we have a little bit of a tendency to focus on current performance. So what we can see in front of us now, and that tends to be more physical and technical factors. And we'll look at why that's important in a second, but it's important that we consider the whole player, and particularly these psychosocial factors that we keep kind of mentioning. So next slide, Tom, please. Yeah, so this is also important to think about looking at things from different angles. If you look at this picture of Maradona, you're thinking, wow, he's some player who's got 6 Belgian defenders around him. Imagine like being that good that you need 6 defenders to stop you. Then if you look at it from a slightly different angle, okay, we can see he's actually just received the ball from free kick. So the 6 players were actually in a wall. So that completely changes your perspective on that first picture. So the point being, if you look at things from different angles and different opinions, it's important it gives you the whole picture. Okay, so just looking at it through your eyes and on a one-off kind of occasion, and looking at it through physical or technical parameters is a little bit limiting. Slide, please. Okay, so think about the 6 blind men and the elephant. Okay, I'm really sorry, guys. I'm just going to have to duck out now. Something's come up. Really sorry, Tom. I'll try and get back on the call before the end. But yeah, I'll catch up with you. Really sorry to do this. Hopefully, I'll be back on shortly.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so if you look at these 6 guys looking at different parts of the elephant, you can see that some people, like the guy in the middle, like, is it a wall? The guy looking at the legs, is it a tree? And they're looking at the elephant from all sorts of different angles. And actually, they might come up with all sorts of different answers around what they're looking at. And if only if they talk to each other, they might come up to the point that it is an elephant. So it's like having these multiple eyes and multiple kind of views might give you the full picture. If we start to take this back to maybe sport or football, for example, we see year on year we have kind of early selection bias. We have people that are picked largely on physical or athletic status. And what we've really got and might want to consider is, what about the psychosocial maturation status? If we look beyond physical, we might actually make better decisions if we are in environments that are selective. In any given school year, for example, and most teams, football's certainly one of them, is you picked on school year, so you might have from the youngest to the oldest a year's difference, a year's development. At 8, 9, 10, 11, that is absolutely huge amount of difference just by chronological. So being born in the first quarter of the year, you're actually really potentially advantaged physically. However, what we do know is those that are less developed and or younger in the year, they often become better problem solvers. They often become better technically. They often become more resilient because they're having to work out every single trick in the book. So if we actually start to have a wider lens and use different pieces of information, we might actually begin to make some better informed judgments around who we may be selecting into our environments. And actually really getting to know players is really, really important. So you look at the image on the left, the person on the left, the taller one, obviously has the same age group. The one on the left has a physical and an athletic advantage, but it might be that they rely on that and aren't really developing their technical skills. And it might be that the one that is the smaller one on the right might be developing really good tight technical skills, really good problem solving abilities, but also beyond that, the one on the right might be more psychosocially mature. You might be able to have a conversation with them. The one on the left might not be. So having this kind of wider and taking different lenses of players might help us make better decisions about how we might develop players. I've got another slide that kind of talks to that point a little bit, and this is Villeman and Lavalle's career transition model. I think this is really useful, but what it does really, it just kind of acknowledges that there's more going on beyond that just person right in front of you. So really useful kind of model that just starts to map out, for example, primary to secondary. It's a really big transitional moment for people. We might actually need to consider, well, what's going on with that individual? Have they sort of changed a little bit? Like they're getting into adolescence, they're moving school, they're meeting new people. Like there, you can start to map out core milestones. If you go up from the bottom one to psychosocial level, there's a change in nature of who's offering support. You know, parents, siblings, peers when you're little, but actually as people get older, you know, and maybe get to higher levels, it's partners, it's coaches that end up being the bigger supporter of these people. If we look at the psychological level, that's the third one up or second one down, we've got these big milestones of being a child, and what is it to be a child, and what do children need, and what is it to be an adolescent, and what do adolescents need? They need to think they own their own process. They're also risk takers, and we need to know that information to have a little bit of an idea of why they may be behaving like that. A little tiny bit of a plug, but not really. Like we wrote what we'd like to think is a pretty useful chapter in a book around psychosocial maturation and what that actually means for coaches. Things like group size, types of tasks, where you might speak to different children, different ages and stages. So I hope that might be pretty useful. I don't know if you want to take a picture of that or something, but like there is startings of resources. There's not much knocking about, but these kind of models and ideas we do hope are useful to coaches. Did James come back in?
Yeah, I'm back on, Tom. Yeah.
Okay, mate.
False alarm. Yeah. Okay. So, in terms of approaches, and again, this links into the kind of the six blind men and the elephant kind of approach. This is something that the ECB, the English Cricket Board, pioneered and multiplied multiple times, and I know there's a few academies like United have kind of adopted this method as well. So rather than just seeing it from one angle on one occasion, we're getting different people to see the players and at different times, because it may be, you know, they have an absolute blinder of a game one week and they're dreadful the next week. It happens for all the reasons that Tom's just mentioned about maturation, hormones, and you know what's going on in their social life, that sort of thing. So there's different ways that you can actually do this in terms of different times and different measures. So if you've got any, we say scouting talent ID meetings here, it could just be a grassroots thing where you're talking about players. Have an opinion beforehand. Okay, so don't discuss it with other people. Make sure you maintain your independence. So there's less chance of what we call groupthink. There's pressure for you to conform with what everyone else thinks, or confirmation bias, where you're seeking opinions that are similar to yourself. So yeah, you can use devil's advocate as well. So get someone to deliberately give the opposite opinion. So it then opens up that side of debate. And then, you know, is it development versus winning? You're developing. Again, this is being the whole player rather than just looking at winning or technical, physical kind of parameters. Okay, so this psychosocial stuff, the slow burning stuff, is what actually is going to benefit the players in the long term. So it's performance now against potential further on.
So we'll have a little look at the how now, start to give you some practical ideas and thinking tools, if you like. And one of the things you might want to think about is, like, do we adopt like a separate approach? We think about the FA4 corner model. Do we offer like a separate approach where, you know, somebody's role is to do technical and tactical stuff, might be a coach, and somebody's role somewhere else is to do psych stuff and social stuff, and then someone else's job's to do physical stuff? Like, that is an approach that you can take, and it's kind of holistic, but it's kind of separate. A preferred or integrated approach is something that James and I'd probably advocate more than any other. And there's this nice analogy within the FA, like the rope of all those four colours of tech tac, psychological, physical and social actually woven in together into one experience that feels like the game, that to a child or adult feels like a football training session, but actually with clever design, that football training session can get a lot more out than just sort of technical and tactical and some physical. So hopefully we're going to give you some ideas about how we might be able to integrate some of that into our coach sessions.
Yeah, so yeah, using the four corner model, like I say, we tend to see things like technical, physical, tactical stuff that are easy to see and easy to measure. Whereas the psychosocial stuff, firstly, we've got the issues with definition that you mentioned before. Tends to be a lot of jargon in academia, but just needs simplifying. And then it's how we can then embed these psychosocial in the blue corner into sessions, like Tom said. So we're actually the saying that psych is always present. Okay, so whatever game, whatever practice you do, and there is a psych or a social element in there somewhere. So it's how we actively coach that, and maybe then design our sessions to give that a little bit more of a psychosocial flavour above the tech tac stuff, so that we kind of reprioritise them at times.
Yeah, nice. So as a starting point, it's an example of a document or an element of a document that we have at Doncaster within the academy. I had and I've still got a role in the academy as looking after their site provision, and I set their current site program up with the remit of developing better players, better people, developing and integrating the psychosocial aspect. One of the things we did, which looking back is a really useful exercise that you might want to undertake at planning stage, is actually just think about, like, what am I going after? So for a range of kind of informal meetings, stud-at training sessions, stud-at games, chatting with players, chatting with coaches, we came up with these 8 characteristics that you can see on the left. So communication, control, commitment, confidence, concentration, resilience, present, self-awareness. Now, in their own, they're not unique characteristics or skills, but they were the top 8 that we thought were important at Doncaster Rovers. So actually, that was really useful, because then we had a view of the sort of things we were going after. The second thing we did was to have some what we call observable behaviours. So these are all those kind of words on there. So for each of those 8 characteristics, we provided or co-created, that's me and the coaches and other full-time members of staff at the club, we presented some just observable behaviour. So what are the 3 or 4 things that would look like confidence within the foundation phase, and that's 9s to 12s, or what would confidence look like in youth development phase? It looked different because the kids are older, they're 13 to 16, and it looked different in the professional development phase. So we actually have this aged and staged view of some core behaviours that we'd like to see. And what that allowed us to do is it allowed coaches to, and it still allows coaches to have a conversation about, that person's showing confidence, or that person's not, or that person's showing resilience, or that person's not. And it starts to allow us to build a curriculum and weave into sessions, or think about, okay, if we're doing overload, that'll probably be like might promote some resilience there, or actually the ones that are having all the success, that's promoting confidence. So it starts to build ideas about how you can explore session design, but also have conversations about players. So if you are thinking about integrating psychosocial development, I'd really encourage you to think about, what am I going after? Which of those 8 things? What will they look like if I saw it? And that becomes a really nice starting point to be able to start to plan curriculum, session, that kind of stuff.
So this is an example of a performance profile, which you can send examples of this out to people on an Excel document. So basically what you're doing is you're profiling players in all 4 corners. So the process here would be, if you've got time, you can ask the players what they think are important for their position for each corner, almost like building the perfect player. So for a centre-back, you might have, I don't know, John Terry's passing ability, Ferdinand's composure, things like that. So going back a little bit. So you want to build the perfect player from each corner. If you've got time, you can ask the players that. Sometimes these are pre-filled. So when I've worked in academies, we've actually pre-filled this to make it a bit easier. And you can see we've pre-filled the psychosocial ones here, which are the ones that are based on our research. So the next step is then, once you've built that perfect player, the players will then score themselves out of 10. And the coaches will also give them a score out of 10 as well. So it gives you, you can take a mean score from that. You could do more scores if you want. A lad I'm working with at the minute, I've actually got 4 scores from him. So the more data, the better, if you've got the time to do that. And then once you've done that, you can identify what that player's super strengths, as we call them. So what's got them in the team, and what their areas for development are, or we used to call them weaknesses, whatever suits really. And once you've done that, then that gives you kind of a priority of what you can work on with that player. And even this self-evaluation phase for the player can be kind of like a little bit of a psych session in itself. It's getting to think a little bit more deeply around not just what they need to improve on, but very important what they're actually good at as well.
Yeah, nice. And there's loads of ways you can kind of feed that back to players and have that conversation with them. So at Doncaster, we have a little bit of resource, and we're able to create these sort of FIFA cards for players, which can really help kind of let them know where they're at. Once you've got that information that James just talked about, they can become nice like ILP type documents that are simple and engaging for players. But I'm sure you can think of 1,000,001 ways to kind of feed that back to players. We've put a link on the slide, and I think it should work on Teams. You should be able to click that link. That's like a free version of creating an online image of something that's like a FIFA card. So that might be a tool you might want to use for them. But feeding back to players and letting them know where they're at with view to then developing them, I think is really useful. And that's feedback like you would do with anything else as a coach. There's loads of ways I'm sure you can be more creative than that to give feedback to players. So on to kind of curriculum and session type stuff.
Yeah, so now this looks a very busy slide. So this is something I did in the academy for, but there's a lot simpler ways doing this, if you wish. But just if you have a look at it, kind of call it bullseye in players. So your super strengths are in green, areas to develop, weaknesses, whatever you want to call them, are in orange, and then across 5-week block there. So in academies, you tend to work across 6 weeks, and they'll have 6 blocks per season, but whatever works for your context. So in block 1, 2 players are working together, and they're working on, so you can see long passing, tackling, leadership, communication, and then enjoying challenges, super strength for player 1. Player 2, their strengths, finishing, dribbling, 1v1 defending in front, teamwork, concentration, and areas to develop would be non-dominant foot, tackling, and confidence. Okay, so then your session design for those 2 players would be around that, and how you then embed it into the session, whether that's taking them aside and working with them, or how you'd integrate it into more of a group session in games, which Tom's now going to go through a little bit more detail.
Thanks, James. So what I've got here is it's a bit of a prototype, but my experiences in this sort of space, I think this starts to make sense and can make sense to others. So this is the PACER acronyms. They're the bits in orange, and there's these kind of 5 steps that we might want to consider when we're trying to plan and deliver on psychosocial development in our contexts. And I'll walk you through it from left to right now. So the P of PACER is plan. It's really important to plan what psychosocial skills and characteristics you're gonna go after and you feel are important to you. What are they? What do they look like? You might also view that as what are the game demands. So you might have a curriculum that is about phases of the game. So if it's around finishing the attack, well, what psychosocial skills and characteristics might be needed to effectively do that, or emergency defending, or something like that. the game and game phases might dictate the psychosocial skills and characteristics you might want to weave in. You might then, another thing you might do is your broad approach. So your approach of your characteristics, you might do it as almost a curriculum, so one after the other. So 4 weeks on this, 4 weeks on that, 4 weeks on the next one. And that's fine. Or you might do a very much kind of individualized, bullseye approach. There's probably those two broad kind of approaches. Then once you're in sessions, the coach bit of the PACER acronym is what actually you're going to do with your practice design and your coach behaviours. Like, how are you going to play around with those to develop psychosocial skills? So one I gave earlier was like the simple use of overloads and underloads. So for example, the team that has all the success with the overload, say you've got 3v2 attacking, your 3 strikers, that you might purposefully use that to actually then develop confidence. They're going to have more shots, going to have more of the ball, going to have more possession. And that might be an intentional thing to try and develop confidence in those players. Conversely, if you're in a 3v2 defending situation, that's going to be stressful, tough work, big challenge, and that might be your intentional strategy to build resilience in those players. You might have player-led sessions to try and develop autonomy and self-awareness. That was something people put on the word cloud earlier. Or you might use things like praise when you see it, like you would see in a technical skill or something like that. So you've got to coach it and create sessions that allow for the presence of those psychosocial skills. The environment, the E of PACER, is those things that are around that coaching session that aren't in that coaching session. That might be showing video examples, like setting homework, so they're thinking about psych skills and developing psych skills away from that training session. You might use strategies like playing people a year down to lower that challenge point to develop that confidence, or giving them some skills around emotional control, then increasing that challenge point by playing them up if you can do that, taking them out of the comfort zone and playing them in different positions, subbing people on and off in unplanned, so creating chaos for people, are strategic ways to develop things like resilience, problem solving, etc. Now they're like in green, I've put like they're really context specific, those ideas. So we don't, you might be at a grassroots, an academy, you might work with young, old, so those strategies that I'm giving you are really down to your context, and they have to be developmentally appropriate. So strategies to build resilience in adults will be different for strategies to build resilience in 8-year-olds, for example. But there's some broad ideas. And it's always good practice. You've always got to review whether you think they're having an impact. So are these players showing some of those characteristics that you were trying to develop? Would be really useful. You might want to review the psychosocial aspect of a session as part of the session in a debrief. Is it worth taking 2 or 3 minutes at the end of a session to explore how they might have felt if you tried to create a slightly challenging situation, for example? And a really nice little kind of term that we like to use, what went well in a session, even better if, and they're just nice ways to frame, like, how could we support the development of our sessions? So the PACER approach is an idea, a framework, a guide, a bit of a tool to help with your planning and delivery and evaluation of your psychosocial skill development efforts as a coach. Shall I play that now, James?
Yeah, I'll just give a bit of a context. So this is sometimes we can use role models to explain things, and this is a really good little clip from one of my favourite players, and one of my favourite Premier League goals as well. So I'll tell you a little bit more afterwards. Okay, so I think some really positive messages in there about kind of how he sort of looks at his career. So even he had a really good career, he'll look at things he could have done better, even at that level. But he also takes on board, what he's done well. So things like using role models like that, I think, is really powerful. And sometimes you might want to use it the other way as a bad example. But I think often the positive is a really good one. So, what would such and such a player do in this situation? Or what was such and such a player. So it's all, I think, role modelling and little video clips like that are great. And you can use them in the classroom. You can send them by WhatsApp, Spond, whatever platform you're on. So really useful little tools. Okay, so this is just an example of one game that I use quite often. This is a little 1v1 Querva game. So it's a 10 by 10 box. So you've got 2 players at the top and 1 at the bottom. So blue plays against red and green will rest. So blue serves the ball into red, will go and press, try and win the ball, and red has to then beat the blue back to the blue corner and stop the ball near the cone and gets 10 points. Okay, if blue wins the ball from red, they go to the red corner and try and stop it there, and they get 10 points. And they've also got the option of an easy 5 points either side if they don't want to go for the 10-point score. So lots of different things in here. There's loads of technical things in there, a few tactical ones just because it's 1v1, but lots of psych stuff in there as well that you can coach. So we're going to show you a video in a sec of this, which isn't the most high tempo, but it gives you an idea, and we can look at maybe how we go about coaching it. So if you could just play the video, Tom, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so coaching points there. Obviously, you've got your technical stuff like body shape and using your arm, pinning the player and that sort of thing. But for me, if you could just play it again, cheers, Tom. When the green player loses the ball in a second, the coaching points here, this is kind of your resilience commitment kind of thing. Why have you just given up? Look at your body language. Okay, keep pressing. You never know what's going to happen with the white player. Are they going to give the ball away? Are they going to have a bad touch? So what would such and such a player do in this situation? I'd probably use like Roy Keane, Brian Robson from my era. People can probably update me on better ones from this era. But there's where you kind of coaching is created around that psychosocial corner, and we're coaching that actively rather than just the tech tac bits. So like I said earlier, psych is always present. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so just to summarize really, in terms of your coaching, the process is always more important than the outcome. So if you get the process, the development part right, winning becomes a byproduct. Okay, so if you tell players you've got to win, it just generally leads them to choking and playing badly. If you focus on the process, actually every single step they take, you will find that they are more likely to win because they're playing in the right way. So focus on the process. Differentiating is important to get to know your players, what makes each player tick, how can we best kind of serve them as coaches. Be aware of some of the cognitive biases we mentioned before, or spotting them in other people. Be aware of the maturation stuff that Tom mentioned around what's going on with the teenage brain. Are they an early or late developer? Where's their birthday in that development year? So early, late development, relative age is slightly different. And then, try things out. I think in football, any organisation, the worst phrase you can hear is "this is the way we've always done it." So try different things, experiment a little bit. John McDermott, who's a top coach developer with the FA, says it's a blend of science and art. So the science is the stuff we're doing tonight, and the art is then your ability as a coach to take that and apply it to your context and apply it to each individual player. The most important thing, above all, the most powerful word I think that we often forget in sport is enjoy. Okay, more than anything over my last 20 odd years of experience, telling people to enjoy it is just, it gives a better performance, and you're also creating that better environment for them. Next slide. So yeah, just to finish off, this is just to emphasise that point a little bit. So this is Ben Stokes talking about what happens with England. So if they can do this at the super elite international level, why can't we do this in our context? If you play, please, Tom.
Okay, so back to me, really, just with the last piece of information. Well, firstly, we hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've got something out of it. We are planning to have a live event at our Leeds Beckett campus in Headingley, where that'll be a CPD event in early 2025. And we'll be sending information out early next year around what that's going to look like. There'll be opportunities to see live sessions, to have a go at designing one and putting one on. It'll be really kind of practical kind of event. So that's a bit of a heads up on that. But yeah, thanks very much for listening. Thanks very much for your interest and booking on. And we've got a little bit of time now just to field any questions that you might have. Don't know how you normally do that, Tom, in these kind of sessions. So yeah, I'll let you take over and just we'll answer in whatever way we can.
A huge thanks to Tom and James there. Some really interesting content. I hope you've all gathered some little nuggets of information that you're going to implement back in your clubs and in your coaching. If anyone does have any questions, if you want to stick them in the chat, if you want to come off mute and switch your camera on, feel free to do so. But yeah, really enjoyed that, guys. Some really good content. I like that Ben Stokes bit at the end there.
Yeah, thank you.
Look forward to that one next year, the live event. Be coming along to that one. So a couple of questions coming in the chat. People typing.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Max.
Oh, singing your praises, Tom and James.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Will you guys be sharing the slides with Lee? And he might follow up with that one.
Yeah, there's no reason why we can't do that.
Yeah. Perfect. And a reading list. Paul's asked if there's a reading list that you could direct anyone into as well. If you share that with Lee, and then Lee will get that sent out in the next couple of days.
We'll try and send some bits. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's give that a go. Yeah.
Good stuff. as well as any more questions coming in. Really appreciate. Max, I think, wants to jump in and ask a question.
Jump in, Max. Go for it.
Hi guys.
Cheers,
can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you fine, loud and clear, mate.
So I just wanted to ask quickly, like, if you can't answer it, then no worries. But it's just about, like, I did an application for my UFB, and one of the questions was about how would you hit all four of the four corner model, and I'm just asking, how would you guys like answer that sort of question? Just on if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, like on a planning level, you'd probably need a physical outcome, psych outcome, social outcome, tech outcome to your session. And I think actually it's like you might start with the game, which I think that absolutely makes so much sense, starting with the game. But it's also the game might then dictate, okay, well, they're gonna have to develop some. So if you know the game and know what you're wanting out of it, they might say, oh, they're gonna have to develop some right confidence here. So I can use this session to develop confidence. So that ticks that, and it's a team game. So we might have a social aspect where we do a shared review towards the end and spend 5 minutes. So like, I think any session has the capacity to hit all four corners.
Yeah.
But it's actually just identifying that and bringing that out and being aware of it. So say at Doncaster, and I've gone in as a psych, and I'm interested in football, and I'm a reasonably experienced coach. Like, what I found is coaches are doing a lot of good stuff in this space anyway. They're just not identifying it or recording it.
Yeah, no, I just thought I'd ask, because that was one that I got that I just struggled, because obviously it was also got 100-word limit on the application, and I just struggled with how would I word this where I can cover all four aspects in my explanation.
Yeah, so I've seen it done, Max. I don't know if it's on the right slide, the four corner slide now, where people have maybe done that and color coded that. So you can put your kind of which bits you're working on for each corner. And if you go back to, bear with me, to the game. Yeah, so for that, if you're looking in the technical corner, you've got short passing, you've got tackling, you've got dribbling. Then tactical will be your decision making. It'll be 1v1 defending, 1v1 attacking. Your physical side would be agility, maybe speed a little bit. And then these are the psych bits that will come in there. So like Tom said, you're going to have psych in each bit. It's recognising where that comes in this session, and then maybe kind of listing that and using that with your psych key factors as well as your technical, tactical, physical ones. That makes sense.
That's great, thank you. It's just the social and psychological ones are the ones I was struggling on, because obviously as coaches we sort of like naturally sort of lean more towards the tactical and technical, but it was the social and psychological one which I was struggling to answer, and if that makes sense. So that photo there you've put up really helps.
Yeah, so I mean the ones there are ones that we've sort of come up with our research, and there are sort of other papers around, and you ask different people, they'll see different ones. But if you've kind of got an idea of a certain amount that you think are relevant to your context, and that's a good starting point, I think.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a 100-word limit, and I was just struggling with them two, psychological and social. It was the ones I was struggling to get across within 100 words. It's like so yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good stuff. We got any more for any more? Thanks again, guys. Really appreciate you giving up your evenings, and thanks again to Tom and James for the content. That is really good, really interesting. So I look forward to a bit more watch this space for next year, for 2025.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us on.
No worries.
Thanks,
If there's
everyone.
nothing more, I'll stop the recording.